The morning started like any other Tuesday in September. People walked to work, children played in parks, and the world spun quietly through space. Then everything changed. At exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, the sky above New York City began to shimmer. The air itself seemed to bend and twist like water. Then, slowly, a massive shape appeared through the strange ripples. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The ship was made of what looked like crystal. It was huge, bigger than any building in the city. The crystal caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the streets below. The ship made no sound as it hung in the air above Central Park. Within minutes, similar ships appeared over London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, and 20 other major cities around the world. Each ship was identical, each silent, each beautiful, and terrifying at the same time. Dr. Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his office at NASA when his assistant burst through the door. "Dr. Morrison," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to see this right now." Jake followed her to the main control room where dozens of people stared at computer screens, showing live feeds from around the world. His coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor, but he didn't notice. "How long have they been there?" he asked. 17 minutes, someone answered. They all appeared at the same time. No warning, no signals, nothing. Jake's phone buzzed. It was Dr. Emma Sullivan, the government's top language expert. "Jake, are you seeing this?" "Yeah, I'm seeing it." "Any communication attempts?" "Nothing yet. But the president wants us at the Pentagon in 1 hour. You, me, and Colonel Harris." Jake looked at the screens again. The ships just sat there, waiting. "Emma, I think first contact just happened." "I think you're right." An hour later, Jake sat in a secure room deep underground. Emma was there, along with Colonel Ben Harris, a man who had spent his whole career preparing for threats to America. The three of them were now Earth's first contact team. "Here's what we know," Colonel Harris said, reading from a thick folder. 25 ships, all identical. They're about 2 miles long and half a mile wide. Our sensors can't penetrate them. They're not responding to any radio signals. They're just waiting. Emma leaned forward. "Waiting for what?" "That's what we need to find out," Jake said. "Have they made any hostile moves?" "None. They're not even blocking air traffic. Planes can fly around them with no problems. It's like they want to be seen, but don't want to cause panic." "Too late." "For that," Emma muttered, glancing at a TV screen showing crowds of people in the streets. Some running, some just staring at the sky. Then it happened. Every screen in the room flickered, and a voice spoke. Not through speakers, but somehow directly into their minds. The words formed clearly in English, though something told them the same message was being heard in every language on Earth. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are the Zephyrian Collective. We have observed your species for 62 of your years. The time has come for direct contact." Jake felt his heart pounding. Emma grabbed his arm. Colonel Harris reached for his radio. The voice continued, calm and emotionless. "We seek immediate audience with your prime intellects. Your greatest minds, your most advanced thinkers, your cognitive elite. They must present themselves within 1 of your solar days." "Our what?" Emma whispered. "We are Coordinator Vel Thur of the Collective. We have traveled far to assess your species' worthiness for inclusion in our alliance. This assessment will determine your world's future." The voice paused, and somehow they could sense something like curiosity in the silence. "Your thought patterns are unusual. Our deep scans detect cognitive capabilities that do not match our records of lesser species. This interests us. We will evaluate your potential through direct testing of your finest intellectual specimens." Colonel Harris finally found his voice. "Testing? What kind of testing? You will present your most capable minds. We will present challenges that determine mental sophistication. Success grants your species consideration for collective membership. Failure results in our guidance of your civilization's development. Jake didn't like the sound of guidance. How do we contact you? He asked aloud. Contact is unnecessary. We observe all. When your representatives are assembled, we will know. 24 hours. The presence in their minds vanished, leaving behind only the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of their own breathing. Emma was the first to speak. Did that just happen? Cognitive elite, Colonel Harris said. They want our smartest people. Jake stood up and walked to the window, though all he could see was concrete walls. Somewhere above them, crystal ships waited in the sky, and alien beings were preparing to judge humanity. We need to call everyone, he said. Nobel Prize winners, chess masters, the top scientists from every field. If they want our best minds, we'll give them our best minds. What if we fail their test? Emma asked. Jake turned back to his teammates. Then I guess we find out what alien guidance looks like. Colonel Harris was already on his radio, calling for immediate transportation for the world's greatest thinkers. Outside, millions of people looked up at the crystal ships and wondered if their world would ever be the same. In his crystal ship above New York, Coordinator Velther studied the readings from their scans. These humans were strange. Their cognitive patterns showed potential, but also chaos. Order and disorder mixed together in ways that shouldn't work, yet somehow did. It would be interesting to see how they performed under proper evaluation. The collective had tested many species over the millennia. Most failed quickly. A few passed and joined their alliance. But none had ever shown readings quite like these. Perhaps Earth would surprise them. Perhaps not. Either way, in 24 hours, they would know what humanity was truly capable of. 23 hours later, the world's smartest people stood in a huge white room inside the crystal ship above New York. Getting there had been the easy part. The aliens had simply made a door of light appear in the Pentagon, and anyone who walked through it found themselves on the ship. Dr. Amy Chun had won 3 Nobel Prizes for her work in physics. Dr. Matt Rodriguez was famous for solving math problems that had puzzled humans for hundreds of years. Luke Peterson could beat any computer. At chess, Dr. Rachel Moore understood the human brain better than anyone alive. 12 of Earth's greatest minds stood together, waiting. Jake Morrison, Emma Sullivan, and Colonel Harris were there too, along with Dr. Sophie Blake, a child psychologist who had asked to observe. The government thought it might be useful to have someone who understood how minds work differently. The room around them was beautiful but strange. The walls seemed to be made of the same crystal as the ship, but they glowed with soft light. There was no furniture, just smooth surfaces that somehow felt comfortable to sit on. Coordinator Velther appeared without warning. One moment the room was empty except for humans. The next moment a tall figure stood before them. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin had a blue-silver color that shifted like water. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it moved, it was perfectly smooth, like it was floating. Greetings, cognitive specimens of Earth, Velther said. The words appeared directly in their minds again. We are pleased by the rapid assembly of your intellectual elite. Dr. Chun stepped forward. We're honored to meet you, Coordinator. May we ask what these tests will involve? The evaluation consists of progressive intellectual challenges. Each test measures different aspects of mental capability: logic, pattern recognition, strategic thinking, mathematical reasoning, spatial awareness. The challenges increase in complexity until failure occurs. And if we fail? Luke Peterson asked. Then your species requires guidance to reach proper development. we will provide this guidance. Dr. Rodriguez raised his hand. What does guidance mean, exactly? Efficient resource allocation, elimination of wasteful practices, direction, toward logical social structures. Your species shows potential, but lacks focus. We can provide focus. Sophie Blake felt a chill. This didn't sound like help. It sounded like taking over. Let us begin, Velther said. The first test appeared as light in the air above them. It was a three-dimensional puzzle made of glowing shapes that moved and changed. The humans had to figure out the pattern and predict what would happen next. Dr. Chun studied it carefully. The shapes followed mathematical rules, but they were incredibly complex. After 10 minutes, she made her guess. A soft chime told her she was wrong. Dr. Rodriguez tried next. He saw mathematical relationships that Chun had missed, but after 15 minutes of calculating, he was also wrong. One by one, Earth's smartest. People failed the first test. Luke Peterson finally solved it, but it took him 45 minutes. Velther seemed surprised by how long it took. Curious, the alien said. This test typically takes our younglings 3 minutes to complete. The second test was worse. It involved keeping track of hundreds of moving objects while solving logical puzzles. Dr. Moore, who understood memory better than anyone, lasted 12 minutes before making a mistake. The third test required them to design a strategy for managing resources across multiple star systems. They had to balance competing needs, predict future problems, and optimize efficiency. Even working together, the human team struggled. Their solution was messy, inefficient, and full of compromises. Velther was clearly disappointed. This is unexpected. Our scans indicated superior cognitive potential, yet your performance suggests average intellectual development. Dr. Chun felt frustrated. These tests are designed for minds that think like yours. Humans might be smart in different ways. Intelligence has only one true form, Velther replied. Logical processing of information to reach optimal solutions. What you call different ways are simply less efficient methods. As the tests continued, the humans performed worse and worse. Dr. Rodriguez, who could solve any mathematical problem on Earth, couldn't keep up with the alien logic puzzles. Luke Peterson, unbeatable at chess, was confused by strategic scenarios that had no clear winning moves. By the sixth test, most of the human team was ready to give up. They felt stupid, which was something none of them had ever felt before. Sophie Blake watched all of this with growing concern. She wasn't trying to solve the tests herself. Instead, she was watching how the tests worked. She noticed something important. Every test had exactly one right answer. Every problem was designed to have a single, optimal solution. The aliens expected everyone to think in straight lines, following logical steps to reach the same conclusion. But humans didn't always think that way. Humans were messy. They made leaps of logic, found creative solutions, and sometimes ignored rules to solve problems in new ways. Coordinator Velther, Sophie said during a break between tests. The alien turned, its black eyes toward her. You are not part of the evaluation group, observer mind. I have a question about your testing methods. Are all your species children able to pass these tests? Our younglings begin this level of evaluation at the age equivalent your 8 years. They complete such assessments easily. Sophie nodded. And they all think the same way? They all reach the same solutions? Correct thinking produces correct results. There is only one path to optimal answers. But what if there were other paths? What if some minds could find solutions you hadn't considered? Velther was quiet for a moment. Such minds would be anomalous, inefficient, problematic. Sophie looked at the exhausted human team. What if we brought some of our children here? Our young ones, the same age as your younglings? just to see how they approach these problems. The room fell silent. Dr. Chun looked at Sophie like she was crazy. Colonel Harris shook his head. These tests were already too hard for Nobel Prize winners. What could children possibly do? But Velther seemed interested. Your offspring minds would also fail these assessments, but the observation might provide useful data about human cognitive development patterns. Could we try it? Sophie asked. Tomorrow, maybe. I know some children who might surprise you. Velther considered this. Very well. Bring your juvenile specimens. We will observe their failure methods. This may help us understand why your adult minds performed so poorly. As they prepared to leave the ship, Sophie thought about the kindergarten class she visited every week as part of her research. 5-year-old children who solved problems by coloring outside the lines, who asked questions that made adults think differently, who saw possibilities where grown-ups saw only rules. Maybe, just maybe, those children could do something that Nobel Prize winners couldn't. Maybe they could think in ways that would surprise everyone, even themselves. The next morning, Sophie Blake sat in her car outside Sunshine Elementary School in Colorado, watching children play on the playground. She had spent the whole night thinking about the alien tests and why Earth's smartest adults had failed so badly. The tests all wanted one correct answer. They were like multiple choice questions where only one choice was right. Sophie knew there was a word for this kind of thinking: convergent thinking. It meant bringing together all your knowledge to find the single best solution. But children, especially young children, were naturally good at something different: divergent thinking. They could look at one problem and see many possible answers. They could think of solutions that adults would never consider. Inside the school, Ms. Grace Taylor was trying to keep her kindergarten class calm. The children had seen the news about the alien ships, and they had lots of questions. Ms. Taylor, said Ryan Cooper, a red-haired boy who always sat in the front row, why do the space people look so sad on TV? Grace looked at the TV in the corner, which showed coordinator Velther's image from yesterday's broadcast. I don't think they look sad, honey. What makes you think that? Their eyes are all black, said Zoe Martinez, a girl with pigtails who loved to draw. When people are sad, their eyes get dark. Maybe they're not sad, suggested Maya Johnson, who was the smallest in the class but had the biggest imagination. Maybe they're just confused, like when you go to a new place and don't know where anything is. Alex Kim, who spoke both English and Korean at home, nodded. My grandma says when you don't understand something, you should ask for help nicely. But they're aliens, said Chloe Adams, who loved space movies. They're probably super smart, smarter than grown-ups. So? Ryan asked. Smart people get confused too. My dad is smart, but he can't figure out my video games. Grace smiled despite her worry. These children saw things so differently than adults. Where grown-ups saw threat and danger, the children saw confusion and loneliness. A knock on the classroom door interrupted her thoughts. Sophie Blake stood there with Dr. Morrison and Dr. Sullivan. Miss Taylor, Sophie said, could we talk to you for a moment? They stepped into the hallway while the children continued their discussion about aliens. This is going to sound strange, Sophie began, but we need your help. And we need some of your students' help. Grace frowned. Help with what? Jake Morrison looked uncomfortable. Dr. Blake thinks your kindergarten students might be able to solve problems that our best scientists couldn't solve. You want to put 5-year-olds in danger? Grace's voice was sharp. No danger, Emma Sullivan said quickly. The aliens aren't violent. They're just ... testing us, trying to see how smart we are. But their tests are designed for minds that think. Like theirs, Dr. Blake believes children might think differently enough to surprise them. Sophie stepped closer. Grace, I've been watching how your students solve problems. Yesterday, remember when Tommy couldn't reach the art supplies on the high shelf? Grace nodded. He asked Maria to boost him up while Kevin got the small step stool to make it safer. Exactly. 3 children, 3 different ideas, one solution that worked better than any single approach. That's divergent thinking. The aliens expect one right answer to every problem, Jake explained. Your students might see answers that we can't. Grace looked through the door window at her class. They were now drawing pictures of what they thought the aliens might need to feel better. Ryan was drawing a picture of an alien eating ice cream. Zoe was drawing aliens and humans holding hands. You really think they could help? I think they might save the world, Sophie said simply. An hour later, Grace told her class they were going on a special field trip to meet some new friends who needed help solving puzzles. Are we going to meet the space people? Maya asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Maybe, Grace said. Would that be okay? Yes, several children shouted at once. I want to ask them about their spaceships, Alex said. I want to show them my drawing, Zoe added. I bet they've never had a peanut butter sandwich, Ryan said thoughtfully. We should bring them some. Chloe raised her hand. Miss Taylor, are they scared? Sometimes when I'm scared, I feel better when I have friends to help me. Grace looked at Sophie, who was watching the children with amazement. These kids weren't afraid. They were curious and excited, and already thinking about how to help the aliens feel welcome. 2 hours later, 5 kindergarten students and their teacher stood in the same white room where Earth's greatest minds had failed the day before. The children looked around with wonder instead of fear. Wow, Ryan whispered. It's like being inside a diamond. It's so pretty, Zoe said, running her hand along the glowing wall. Maya found one of the comfortable crystal surfaces and sat down, swinging her legs. This is the softest rock I ever felt. Coordinator Velther appeared, and the children stared at him with fascination instead of fear. You're really tall, Alex observed, and your skin is shiny like my mom's jewelry. Greetings, juvenile specimens, Velther said. You are smaller than anticipated. We're 5, Chloe announced proudly. Well, Maya is still 4, but she's almost 5. 4.9, Maya corrected. Sophie watched Velther study the children. The aliens seemed puzzled by their lack of fear and their casual behavior. We are told you will attempt our assessment protocols, Velther said. We're going to help you with puzzles, Ryan said helpfully. We're really good at puzzles. And if the puzzles are too hard, we can make them easier, Zoe added. Or we can make new puzzles that are more fun, suggested Maya. Velther looked at Sophie. These specimens suggest modifying the assessment parameters. This indicates flawed understanding of evaluation procedures. Sophie smiled. Maybe it indicates a different kind of understanding. Shall we begin? As Velther prepared the first test, Sophie realized something important. The children weren't approaching this as a test they might fail. They were approaching it as a game they could help improve. And that difference might change everything. The first test appeared in the air above the children, just like it had for the adults the day before. The glowing shapes moved and changed, following complex patterns that had stumped Nobel Prize winners. Ryan Cooper looked at it for exactly 30 seconds, then raised his hand. I know what comes next, he said. Velther seemed surprised. State your solution, young specimen. Well, it depends what game we're playing, Ryan said, standing up to get a better look. If we're playing the copy game, then this shape comes next. He pointed to where a blue triangle should appear. But if we're playing the opposite game, then we need this one. He pointed to a different spot where a red circle would fit. And if we're playing the silly game, then we could put a banana there, and it would make everyone laugh. Velther stared at the human child. There is only one correct answer. But there's lots of right answers, Ryan said patiently. Look, if I change this rule here, then the pattern works this way. And if I change this other rule, it works that way. And if I make up a new rule, it works a completely different way. Ryan proceeded to show 17 different solutions to the puzzle. Each one was mathematically correct within its own set of rules. Each one made perfect sense if you thought about the problem differently. This is not possible, Velther said. Quietly. Want to see more? Ryan asked cheerfully. I bet I can find 25 ways to solve it. Dr. Sophie Blake, watching from the side, saw something amazing happening. Ryan wasn't just solving the puzzle. He was redesigning it, finding new possibilities that the aliens had never considered. Zoe Martinez was next. The test showed her sequence of numbers 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. She was supposed to figure out the pattern and give the next number. That's easy, Zoe said. The next number is purple. Purple is not a number, Velther replied. It is in my pattern, Zoe said, pulling out her crayons. Look, 2 is red because it's small and friendly. 4 is orange because it's bigger and warmer. 8 is yellow like the sun. 16 is green like grass. And 32 is blue like the sky. So the next. 1 has to be purple, like flowers. She drew the numbers in different colors, making each one into a little picture. The 2 was a smiling red face, the 4 was an orange butterfly, and so on. But mathematically, the next number is 64, Velther protested. Oh, 64 would be black, Zoe said matter-of-factly. But that would make the pattern sad. Purple is much better. Purple means the numbers are happy and want to keep growing. Zoe had taken a cold mathematical sequence and turned it into an emotional story about numbers that had feelings and relationships with each other. Her pattern was based on color, emotion, and meaning instead of just multiplication. This specimen has introduced non-mathematical variables into a mathematical sequence, Velther said, sounding confused. She's telling a story with the numbers. Sophie explained. Humans often understand things better when they're part of a story. Alex Kim tackled the next test, which involved arranging geometric shapes to build the most efficient structure. The alien version had one optimal solution that used the least materials and provided the most strength. Alex studied the shapes for a minute, then started building something completely different. This isn't the strongest way, he admitted, but it's the most beautiful way. And if you make something beautiful, people will want to take care of it, so it will last longer. His structure was more complex than the optimal design, but it had patterns and symmetries that were pleasing to look at. It was like the difference between a plain concrete wall and a decorated temple. Also, Alex added, if you build it this way, there's room for birds to nest in the corners. And if you add these little platforms, people can put flowers there. So it's not just a building, it's a home for everyone. Velther studied Alex's design. By pure engineering standards, it was inefficient. But Alex had considered factors that didn't exist in the aliens' calculations. Beauty, community, and harmony with nature. Then came the test that broke everything. Velther presented the most difficult challenge, the one that had stumped Earth's greatest strategic minds. It was a scenario involving multiple star systems that were running out of resources. The test taker had to allocate limited supplies to prevent a complete system collapse. There was supposed to be one optimal solution that saved the most lives with the least waste. Maya Johnson, the smallest child in the group, looked at the complex display showing different planets and resource needs. She tilted her head like she was trying to understand a picture book. This is sad, she said after a moment. Everyone is fighting over the food and water because they think there's not enough. The resources are limited, Velther explained. Efficient allocation is required to prevent system failure. But they're not sharing, Maya said. If everybody shared, there would be enough for everyone. The mathematics do not support that. Conclusion. The resource totals are insufficient for all populations. Maya slid off her chair and walked closer to the display. Can I touch it? Velther hesitated, then allowed the display to respond to her touch. Maya began moving things around, but not the way the adults had. Instead of calculating who needed what most, she started connecting the different systems with bright lines. See, this planet has lots of water, but no food. And this one has lots of food, but no water, so they can be friends and trade. She continued connecting systems, creating a web of relationships. And this planet has really smart people who can help fix things, and this one has materials to build stuff. If they all work together, they can help each other. But the transportation costs, Velther began. They can take turns, Maya interrupted. Like when we play games at school. Everyone gets a turn to help and a turn to be helped. And look, if they share their smart people and their tools, they can figure out how to make more food and find more water. Maya's solution didn't just prevent the system collapse. It created a network of cooperation that made all the systems stronger and more stable than they had been before the crisis started. For the first time since the testing began, Velther was completely silent. Chloe Adams looked at the quiet alien. Are you okay? You look confused? I do not understand how this solution functions. The mathematical models indicate it should not work. Maybe your math is missing something, Ryan suggested helpfully. Math can't count friendship, Zoe added, drawing a picture of aliens and humans holding hands. Or sharing, said Maya. Or making things beautiful, said Alex. Or making people happy, finished Chloe. Velther looked at the 5 small humans who had just solved problems in ways that his entire civilization had never considered. The children had not just found different answers. They had found different types of answers based on cooperation instead of competition, beauty instead of efficiency, emotion instead of pure logic. This is impossible, Velther whispered. 4. 3,000 years, the collective has perfected logical analysis. We have conquered star systems with our superior reasoning. How can these undeveloped minds produce solutions we cannot comprehend? Sophie Blake stepped forward. Maybe that's exactly why they can do it. They haven't learned yet that some ideas are supposed to be impossible. The room fell silent except for the sound of Zoe's crayons as she continued drawing her picture of friendship between the stars. Coordinator Velther stood perfectly still for a long time. His black eyes stared at the displays, showing Maya's solution, where cooperation had created abundance from scarcity. The other kindergarten children waited patiently, used to adults. Needing time to think. Finally, Ryan Cooper broke the silence. Are you sad? You look like my dad when he can't fix the computer. Velther's head turned toward the small red-haired boy. I am experiencing something unfamiliar. For the first time in my existence, I do not understand how to proceed. That's okay, Maya said kindly. When I don't know what to do, I ask my friends for help. Or my teacher, added Alex. Or I try something new, suggested Zoe. The collective does not ask for help, Velther said slowly. We provide guidance to lesser species. We have never encountered minds that could ... that could. He struggled to find words for what had just happened. That could think differently? Sophie Blake offered gently. Yes, but more than differently. Better, in ways we never considered possible. Chloe Adams walked over to Velther and tugged on his robes. Want to see what else we can do? Without waiting for an answer, she pulled out her lunchbox. We brought extra sandwiches in case you were hungry. And we have cookies that Alex's mom made. And coloring books, Zoe added, dumping her backpack on the floor. We thought you might want to color with us. Coloring helps when you're confused. Maya joined them, offering Velthur a juice box. This one is apple. It's my favorite. The ancient, alien coordinator, who had conquered civilizations across the galaxy, stared at the small containers of food and the bright coloring books. His entire worldview was crumbling ... you ... Wish to share your sustenance with me? Of course, Ryan said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. That's what friends do. But I am not your friend. I am your evaluator. I came here to judge your species. Well, now you can be our friend too, Maya said simply. Do you want to be friends? Something inside Velthur broke. Not broke like something damaged, but broke like ice breaking in spring, letting something new flow through. Ah, yes, I would like to be friends. The children cheered and immediately began setting up a picnic on the crystal floor. They showed Velthur how to unwrap a sandwich, how to hold crayons, and how to color inside the lines, though Zoe explained that coloring outside the lines was perfectly fine too, as Velthur carefully colored a flower purple, just like Zoe had taught him. He began to understand something that 3,000 years of conquest had never taught him. Intelligence wasn't just about finding the right answer. It was about finding answers that made life better, more beautiful, more connected. The collective had spent millennia perfecting efficiency, but they had never learned kindness. 6 hours later, Dr. Jake Morrison stood in front of cameras from around the world. Behind him, through a window, one of the crystal ships was visible. In the sky. My fellow humans, he began, today our world changed forever, but not in the way we expected. He paused, looking at his notes, then set them aside. The Zephyrian Collective came here to test us. They wanted to see if we were smart enough to join their alliance. Our greatest minds tried their best, but we failed their tests. A murmur went through the crowd of reporters. But then something amazing happened. 5 kindergarten students from Colorado succeeded where Nobel Prize winners had failed. They didn't just pass the aliens' tests. They showed the aliens that the tests themselves were incomplete. Jake smiled, thinking of the children who were probably having dinner with their families right now, telling them about their new alien friend. Ryan Cooper, Zoe Martinez, Maya Johnson, Alex Kim, and Chloe Adams didn't just solve problems. They solved them with creativity, cooperation, and kindness. They showed an ancient civilization that there are ways of thinking they had never imagined. He looked directly into the camera. The collective is not here to judge us anymore. They're here to learn from us. Coordinator Velthur has requested what he calls a cultural exchange program. They want to understand what he calls kindergarten logic, the ability to think creatively, to cooperate instead of compete, and to find solutions that make everyone happier. The questions from reporters came fast and loud, but Jake held up his hand. Tomorrow, teams of Zephyrian observers will visit schools around the world, not to test our children, but to learn from them. They want to understand how young minds can see possibilities that even the most advanced civilizations miss. 3 months later, Miss Grace Taylor sat in her classroom watching something that still amazed her every day. In the corner, 2 young Zephyrians sat cross-legged on the floor with Ryan and Maya, working on a puzzle together. The Zephyrian younglings had been sent to Earth to learn what their elders called creative cooperation protocols. They were trying to understand how human children could look at problems and see opportunities instead of obstacles. No, Ryan was explaining patiently to one of the alien children. You don't have to find the right answer. You have to find an answer that makes everyone happy. Maya nodded seriously. And then you check if it's fair for everyone. If it's not fair, you change it until it is. The young Zephyrian, who looked like a smaller version of Velthur, but with silver eyes instead of black, was struggling with the concept. But efficiency requires optimal resource allocation. Fairness often contradicts optimization. But what good is efficient if people are sad? Maya asked. Across the galaxy, Coordinator Velther sat in a council meeting with the highest leaders of the collective. For the first time in their history, they were discussing changing their fundamental approach to civilization. The kindergarten protocols have shown remarkable results, Velther reported. 17 systems that were experiencing resource conflicts have achieved stability through cooperative redistribution. Productivity has actually increased in most cases. This contradicts 3 millennia of strategic doctrine, said Elder Zefmer. Yes, Velther agreed. Our doctrine was incomplete. We optimized for efficiency, but ignored what humans call happiness. We maximized output, but minimized cooperation. The human children showed us that these are not separate goals. They can work together. The council voted to implement kindergarten protocols throughout the collective's territory. Systems that had been locked in resource competition for centuries began working together. Planets that had never spoken to each other started sharing knowledge and materials. Back on Earth, in a small classroom in Colorado, Zoe Martinez was teaching a young Zephyrian how to draw flowers with emotions. This flower is happy because it has friends, she explained, adding smiling faces to the petals. And this one is excited because it's learning new things. The alien child carefully copied her technique, adding its own touches. Its flower had colors that didn't exist on Earth, but somehow they conveyed the same feelings of joy and friendship. I understand now, the young Zephyrian said in its careful, musical voice. Beauty and efficiency can exist together. Cooperation and logic can work as one. The humans call this wisdom. We just call it being nice, Zoe said, handing her new friend another crayon. And in that simple exchange, the future of the galaxy was being written by children who understood that the best solutions weren't just smart, they were kind. Years later, historians would mark this as the moment when 2 civilizations learned from each other. The Zephyrians gained creativity, cooperation, and joy. Humans gained new technologies, cosmic perspective, and friends among the stars. But to 5 kindergarten students in Colorado, it was just the day they made friends with some confused space people who needed help learning how to color outside. The lines dot, and sometimes, coloring outside the lines changes everything.